Hey guys, tonight, we enter a forest so ancient even the moss seems to remember your footsteps. The air is cold, but not biting just enough to remind you that you're somewhere you probably shouldn't be. You walk slowly, careful not to snap twigs beneath your feet, because here, silence feels sacred. Above you, skeletal branches reach out like bony fingers, grasping at the stars, and ahead, mist drifts like half-formed memories across a narrow path. This is no ordinary forest. The locals won't come near it after sundown. They call it the Grove of Echoes, though its name changes depending on which dusty monastery ledger or half-torn scroll you read. Some say it used to be a sanctuary. Others say it was a prison, just one without walls. One thing they agree on: monks once lived here. Monks who whispered secrets into trees. You probably won't survive this, or at least not in the same emotional shape you arrived in. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is over there. I love seeing this little global sleep club light up. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step off the trail. The earth is springy underfoot, like walking on buried secrets. The trees lean a little too much toward you, and their trunks curve not as nature intended, but as if listening. The deeper you go, the quieter it gets. Not the kind of silence you find in an empty room, but the kind that wraps around your ears like velvet and eats up the sound of your own breath, your footsteps, your pulse muted. It's here in the thick of the forest that you find the first one. The tree is massive, oak maybe, but older than any. You've seen its bark thick with what looks like layered parchment. Along its trunk are narrow ridges, not quite carvings, not quite natural, like it was written on in the most delicate way possible. You touch it, it's warm. The bark pulses once subtly, like a heartbeat, or maybe you imagined it. In the 1100s, medieval Europe saw a surge of reclusive orders. While many were obsessed with asceticism or illuminated manuscripts, there were fringe sects that believed in more organic methods of preservation. One of these groups, rarely spoken of outside obscure footnotes, was the Order of the Green Tongue, a cloister of monks who believed that divine truth could be stored not in vellum or stone, but in living trees. Their practice, whispering. The process wasn't casual. They didn't just talk at trees and hope something stuck. Each whisper rite was timed with lunar cycles performed in specific sacred groves where acoustics were so strange, even birds avoided them. The monk would kneel for hours, murmuring carefully prepared messages, coded poetic, often dark into the cracks of certain trees, known for their listening grain, mostly oaks, elms, and an especially rare type of silver ash that no longer grows in Europe. Here's the creepy part. Modern studies in plant neurobiology, yes, that's a real thing, suggest that trees do respond to sound. Certain frequencies can stimulate growth. Some researchers have argued trees stress under harsh tones. So in a whisper-friendly forest like this one, who knows back to your feet? They've carried you further somehow. You notice a circle of stones, clearly human-placed. In the center, another tree larger than the first, its bark covered in symmetrical wave patterns, almost musical. And here's a weird tidbit for your midnight brain. In 1329, a Benedictine chronicler in Würzburg wrote about an excommunicated monk who claimed he'd sung a confession into a tree after cutting out his own tongue. That tree supposedly wilted for 10 years, and then bloomed blood-red flowers during Lent. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic storytelling, drug-induced hallucination, or a tragic misunderstanding of botany. But this tree in front of you, you're not so sure it's innocent. You press your ear to its bark. It's rough, resin-scented cold at first, but then, there it is, a hum, low, rhythmic like breath. You hold still. It doesn't stop. You swear you hear something under it, a soft, unintelligible murmur, as if voices are trapped inside, echoing from rings of growth decades, maybe centuries apart. Then snap. A twig behind you. You freeze, spin, Nothing there. Just the trees swaying a little too gently, like they're pretending to move with the wind. You remember the stories, the warnings, how the monks never returned to society, how they gave up speech so the trees could speak instead. Some say their bodies dissolved into root systems. Others claim they still roam silent and hooded, guiding the trees to whom they gifted their secrets. The moon breaks through the canopy. You see a shape in the distance, robed, still, waiting. Your heart thuds once, then again softer, almost in rhythm with the hum in the tree. You take one step forward. The shape in the distance doesn't move. Not toward you, not away. It just stands there. You blink once, twice, and like mist between trees, it's gone. You shake it off. Probably just a trick of the light. Or your imagination. You're tired. That's what you tell yourself. You return your attention to the tree, still humming in that low, near-musical rhythm. You start to notice something strange in the bark, tiny notches arranged in clusters, almost like tally marks, except they're uneven, chaotic. The marks don't repeat. They spiral, some pressed deep into the wood, others barely visible. You run your fingers across them and realize it's a pattern, or a message. This is the first time you hear about what scholars have later called the bark script doctrine. It was never an official term, just something one lonely archivist wrote in the margins of a cracked monastery record from 1471. The document described how certain monks believed that trees, due to their long lives and circular growth rings, were ideal record keepers. If you whispered a sequence of sounds consistently over time, the tree would remember the rhythm. Each whisper was aligned with a specific moment in the lunar cycle, usually just before dawn. The tone, emotion, and pacing were critical. Whisper too fast, and the tree wouldn't catch it. Whisper too loud, and you'd bruise the grain. Whisper a lie, and the tree might die. That last part. No one agrees whether it was literal or metaphorical. Historians still argue whether this was a religious metaphor, or if the monks believed in a kind of moral conductivity within plant tissue. But back to the doctrine. The monks taught that tree rings could hold memory not as words, but as pulses, emotions, intent. They were convinced that if someone returned decades later and whispered the right tone again, the tree would respond. Not speak exactly, but resonate. Release. There were stories of trees that suddenly wept sap when certain chants were spoken, or that dropped leaves only for a single person's touch. Here's your fringe fact for tonight. One early 20th century experiment in the Carpathians allegedly recreated this phenomenon. A historian named Alexei Vorel claimed he had found a forest where, when singing an old Slavonic chant, a cluster of birch trees began to lean toward him in sync. He filmed it. The footage stolen, or lost in a fire depending on which version you read. Classic. You notice now that the trees around you are grouped in threes. A triangle. Always a triangle. Each cluster has a central tree marked with deeper lines, almost scarred. This, according to an obscure 14th century treatise preserved in fragments, was part of the monks' spatial doctrine. Each grove was laid out like a circuit. You've probably heard of cathedral acoustics, certain churches where whispered prayers echo for seconds. Well, imagine that, but outside, using trees instead of stone columns. The arrangement amplified sound. Stored, it bounced it along the living wood. You begin to wonder, how many whispers do these trees carry? And how many of those whispers were ever meant to be heard again? Because not every monk used the trees for confession or spiritual recitation. No, some began to experiment. One document mentions a monk named Silvanus, who believed he could encode visions, nightmare sequences into a grove. He spoke not in Latin, but in a self-invented phonetic language. When he died, villagers claimed they heard screaming in the forest every equinox for 7 years. Historians call that folklore. You call it a solid reason to never camp outdoors again. The air grows colder now. Not freezing, but chilling enough that you can see your breath. That's odd. It wasn't this cold when you arrived. You rub your arms, and as you do, you hear something a creaking. Not just branches moving, something deeper, throatier, like wood trying to clear its throat. And now the wind picks up, not through the canopy, but through the trunks. Yes, through them. It sounds like whispers. Or is that wishful thinking? You step between two trees in a triangle formation. The center one pulses under your palm once softly. Your ears start to ring, just slightly. Then you hear something that makes your spine straighten. Your name, spoken faintly. You spin. Nothing. But it wasn't your imagination. You heard it. And you realize something important. The monks may not have just whispered to the trees. They may have taught the trees how to whisper back. It's time to leave this cluster. You move carefully, avoiding roots that seem to twist when you're not looking. A few meters away, you find a stone half buried in the earth. Not natural. It's carved. A phrase in Latin barely readable beneath the moss. Verbum arboris non moritur. The word of the tree does not die. Great. Super comforting. You brush the dirt off the edges and realize it's not a gravestone. It's a marker. For what you're not sure. But beyond it lies a path worn just enough to be intentional. You follow it. And with each step, you feel like you're being evaluated, judged, listened to. The forest is full of ears, and apparently, one or two mouths. You whisper your own name into a tree as you pass just to see what happens. The tree does nothing. But 5 steps later, something behind you whispers it back. You don't turn around this time. You keep walking faster now, but not quite running. You're not ready to see what or who spoke your name in a voice too similar to your own, as if the forest was trying it out, wearing it like a borrowed coat. The path narrows. Branches begin to arch inward, creating a cathedral of bark and shadow. You duck under a mossy arch where roots have woven together like ribs. The air here is still, not dead, just waiting. And then the ground softens. Not the springy moss you've been walking on, but something damper, denser. You kneel down and brush your fingers across it. Dirt, but the texture's off. You dig a little deeper and feel something give under the soil. Wood, boards, laid flat, fitted together tightly. A floor buried. You scrape more away, revealing an old trapdoor sealed with a rusted iron ring. You hesitate, then you lift. It groans as it opens, and stale, damp air rushes up from below. It smells like mildew wax and time itself. You grab a fallen branch and descend into the dark. The wooden stairs are slick but solid. With each step, the silence deepens. It doesn't feel like the absence of sound. It feels like sound is being swallowed. At the bottom, you find yourself standing in a low, vaulted chamber. The walls are stone moss-covered, and the ceiling is formed from interlaced roots. The floor pulses under your feet with the faintest vibration, like a heartbeat slow and deliberate. Welcome to the sanctum of the order beneath the root. In the 12th century, secretive sects began carving out underground sanctuaries to escape not just worldly persecution, but also ecclesiastical scrutiny. This particular order, somewhere between monks and mystics, crafted a monastery in the belly of the forest where their teachings could be hidden in plain root. Here they kept no books, no scrolls, just a singular archive, the living codex, a central chamber surrounded by trees whose roots threaded through the walls like veins connecting everything. The monks whispered their knowledge into these roots, believing the forest itself was their memory palace. You pass through a stone archway and enter the main chamber. It's breathtaking in a decaying fungal kind of way. Long wooden benches. A round dais in the center covered in overlapping tree rings, etched in silver. On the walls, carvings spiral like vines, Latin phrases, ancient runes, and symbols that look vaguely familiar, but elude translation. And in the center of the room stands something unexpected. A mirror, tall, gilded, but fogged over, cracked, and strangely breathing no. not breathing. The air around it seems to ripple, as if it's remembering all the faces that once stared into it. You approach cautiously. For a moment, you think you see your own reflection blink before you do. Here's a solid historical fact for you. Several monastic orders during the Middle Ages used polished obsidian or still water for meditation focus. But some fringe practitioners, especially in Eastern Europe, used mirrors not just for reflection, but for transmission. They believed the mirror could catch thoughts spoken near it and pass them along through time, like voicemail, but haunted. This one, likely not standard issue monastery furniture. Etched along the mirror's frame are the words, "Frange vocem et arbor audiet." Break the voice, and the tree will hear. You whisper into the space. Nothing happens. You whisper again this time, softer, slower, like the monks might have done, and something stirs in the walls. A root tightens in the stone. The air grows heavy. A low, mournful groan echoes through the chamber. Not from your mouth, from the floor. You step back. The mirror clears for a heartbeat, and in that moment, you see something not quite you. A face with your eyes, but aged, haggard, watching. You blink, and it's gone. You make your way deeper into the sanctum past rooms that look like sleeping quarters carved into root hollows. One still has a rotted robe on a peg. Another holds a bowl filled with hardened black wax and a small reed flute. The sound of dripping water echoes softly, and then you find the room that confirms what you've begun to suspect. A chamber filled with bones not scattered, but arranged, sitting upright in robes, head bowed, facing inward in a perfect circle. In the center, a sapling, still alive, glowing faintly. This is where the monks came to die. Not buried, not burned, just offered to the tree. Their secrets, their final words absorbed as whispers into its bark. The sapling pulses once, not with light, but with presence. You move closer. The temperature drops not by much, just a few degrees, maybe to around 5 degrees Celsius or 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Enough to notice. You place your hand on the sapling's trunk. It is warm. And then, just for a moment, you hear 20 voices exhale as one. Not words, not sentences, just sound. Like a sigh that's waited 800 years to be heard. You whisper a thank you, though you don't know why. And as you turn to leave, the sapling leans the tiniest bit in your direction. Not like a breeze moved it, more like it chose to follow. You leave the circle of silent monks behind, but their breath, that united sigh, still seems to cling to your ears. Up the stairs you go, the wood beneath your boots, damp as if it's wept a little in your absence. The trapdoor groans shut above you. The forest greets you again, but now the trees feel less passive, like a crowd, parting quietly for someone important. You. There's a difference now. Before you walked through the woods. Now the woods walk around you. You make your way toward a part of the forest where the air hums like an old radio trying to find a frequency. Trees here are closer together, not clustered, but intentional. You start to notice how certain trunks lean inward, forming gentle parabolas. They look like listening cones. You stop in the center of this grove and whisper one word, hello. The answer comes not in English or Latin, but in sound. It's like a low-rising vibration from beneath your feet, moving up into the bark, then into the air. Not exactly a voice, more like a tone that carries meaning, like music that makes you feel sad even when you don't know why. And here's where we talk about the monks' most bizarre belief sonic memory. They believed that certain trees, especially linden yew, and a now extinct silverleaf ash, could store tonal frequencies over time. Not language, but emotion. A mood, a fear, a hope, and that those who stood in the right position, under the right conditions, could hear that emotion echo back. It's not just fantasy. In recent decades, researchers in the field of bioacoustics have discovered that plants do, in fact, respond to specific frequencies. They can even emit tiny sounds when under stress, like a grapevine, releasing a faint pop when dehydrated. One Israeli study even found that tomato plants react to the buzz of bees by increasing sugar in their nectar, so science may be inching closer to what these monks intuited nearly 1,000 years ago. You place your palm on the nearest tree. Its bark is ridged in spirals, not random, but almost calligraphic. You trace them. The moment your finger follows one complete ring, the tree vibrates faintly. A soft hum builds in your chest, like standing near a tuning fork. And then, without warning, you hear a voice. It's not in your head. It's not outside your head. It's both. Male. Aged. Whispering something rhythmic. You can't understand the words, but the intent is clear. It's a warning. You step back dizzy. The air spins. You sit down hard on a patch of moss that sighs beneath you. The trees lean again, this time a few degrees closer. You're in the middle of a conversation that started centuries ago, and you just answered the call. You look around and realize this isn't the only listening grove. Dozens of trees bear the same spiral ridges. Some are clustered. Others stand alone, sentinel-like. You remember an old traveler's journal, written by a Flemish merchant in 1392, who claimed he found a village of wooden saints in a forgotten valley, each of whom could weep, wail, or sing if addressed with the proper reverence. Historians dismissed it, of course, claimed he had ergot poisoning or drank bad wine. But standing here in this grove, you wonder if maybe the saints were just trees. You test another. This one is a tall elm split down the middle but still alive. Its bark smells like citrus and iron. You whisper your name again, not loudly, but gently, like asking for a favor. And this time, the reply is not a hum. It's a laugh, faint, old, dry as parchment, but definitely a laugh. You freeze. Then it speaks again. One phrase. In Latin, but simple enough to recognize, memento. Remember. You stare at the tree. It is still. It is silent. But the voice still echoes inside your skull, like the vibration never quite stopped. And suddenly, you understand something the monks must have known. The trees don't just remember what's said to them. They remember who said it. That's when you spot it. Tucked into the crook of an ancient beech is a wooden pendant shaped like a teardrop, blackened by time. You pull it loose. It's light brittle and carved with a small sigil, a tongue crossed by a vine. You've seen this before. It was sketched in the margins of a lost codex, known as Lignum Arcanum, allegedly destroyed during the Protestant purges. The codex described something called leaf echoes, where trees communicated with one another using root vibrations and shared emotional data like a whispered language beneath the soil. It sounds ridiculous until you realize that tree roots can in fact communicate using fungal networks, what scientists call the wood wide web. Yes, it's a real term. Trees send nutrients, stress signals, and even alerts to neighboring trees using underground mycorrhizal systems. So maybe the monks weren't wrong, just premature. You place the pendant around your neck. It warms instantly, like it recognizes you. The surrounding trees fall still. No wind, no hum. Then from the far edge of the grove comes a sound unlike any you've heard so far. Singing. Soft. Melancholic. A choral hum that sounds like it's coming from the trees themselves. You turn, but no one's there. Yet the sound grows louder. Resonant, building in harmonies. It feels like a memory not yours, but borrowed. Someone's heartbreak. A vow broken. A death that shouldn't have happened. The trees are remembering something. And they want you to remember it too. The forest sings around you, not with words, but with sorrow. The sound has texture like wind dragging silk across stone. You stand frozen in the center of the grove, the pendant at your chest, warm against your skin, vibrating gently with the notes. You realize you're no longer hearing just one memory. You're hearing many, layered atop each other, old griefs, folded into bark and branch, reliving themselves in cycles. Each verse swelling with echoes of fear, of love, of secrets, never meant for sunlight. And then, silence. As sudden as a breath held too long. The trees stop, the pendant cools, and you become aware there's someone else nearby. A figure steps from between two ash trees, hooded, barefoot, cloaked in layered cloth the color of dried leaves. You want to speak, but your voice catches like a twig in your throat. The figure raises a finger to his lips, a silent warning. Then he beckons. You follow. Your guide walks slowly, each step deliberate, avoiding fallen branches as if retracing familiar steps. You descend a slope, cross a stream cold enough to sting, and emerge into a clearing shaped like a tear. The trees here are skeletal bark, flaking like old parchment leaves gone. Dead, numbered, dormant. In the center stands a stone marker, crooked and moss-choked, with something new placed at its base, a small leather pouch. The figure gestures for you to open it. Inside, a rolled parchment, fragile with age. You unroll it slowly. A map, but not of the forest. It's a sound map, an ancient monk's guide to the frequency-laced groves. Dozens of them, each marked not with names, but with notes. D sharp, F minor, atonal chords. Some are circled, others crossed out. One is underlined with a red smear of pigment that might be blood or berries. At the bottom, a name, Brother Emilian. The figure beside you finally speaks, his voice like dry leaves on stone. He says the pilgrim broke the chain. You ask who the pilgrim was, but the figure is already walking again. You clutch the map and follow your mind racing. You've heard fragments of the story. Most consider it a myth, a tale whispered by monks to scare novices of a man who wandered into the forest seeking the Whisper Codex and left with something else entirely. The story changes depending on the source. Some say he was a scholar. Others say a spy sent to steal the monk's secrets. But all accounts agree on one thing: when he returned. If he returned, he was never the same. You reach the base of a twisted elder tree with a hollow gaping like a screaming mouth. The figure points. Inside, resting in the darkness, is a satchel, time-worn. The leather bears the same sigil as your pendant. You hesitate, then pull it out. Inside, dried parchment sheets, brittle as spider webs. Notes, letters, diagrams. The handwriting is frantic lines pressed deep as if carved in fear. You read aloud a single sentence. The tree knew my lie before I did. You stop. Chills race down your spine, crawling like frost across the skin. The entries are fragments, desperate attempts to explain what happened to the pilgrim after he whispered falsehoods into a grove. He'd thought he could manipulate the order's methods, feed the forest misinformation, hide his true intentions. But the trees had not accepted it. They'd rejected him. Some entries describe him hearing his own voice speaking back, but in reverse. In dreams, he saw forests burning not by fire but by silence, as if the trees themselves had forgotten how to speak. The final entry is scrawled sideways. I left my truth in the dead grove. If you hear me, forgive me. The figure beside you whispers, he poisoned the roots. And now you see what the dead trees around you truly are. Victims, not struck by axe or disease, but by corrupted whispers. The monks had believed that trees could carry truth across time, but they hadn't accounted for intent. When the pilgrim lied, he broke something not just in himself, but in the entire system of memory they'd built. One lie whispered deeply enough echoed outward, like rot in wood. And here's the strange little twist for tonight's insomnia. In 1987, a small patch of ash trees in northern France died off without any visible disease. The cause still debated. But nearby, buried under an old monastery garden, archaeologists found several stone tablets etched with spirals, and a peculiar sigil, a tongue crossed by a vine. Historians still argue whether the forest's death was coincidental, or if something unspoken had been whispered back into the soil. You kneel beside the dead grove, clutching the pilgrim's notes. You press your palm against one of the dry trunks, just to see if anything remains. It shatters, not into splinters, but into silence, utter silence. No birds, no breeze, no breath. You stand slowly. The figure is gone. The map is still in your hand. And the wind that finally returns tastes like regret. The forest remembers, and it doesn't easily forgive. You don't remember walking, only arriving. You're in a different part of the forest now, somehow darker, even though the sky hasn't changed. The canopy overhead thickens into a ceiling light, filtering through in fractured greens and grays. It's silent again, but not empty. The air is full of a kind of listening, and then you hear it music. Soft, distant, a strange harmony that rises and falls like breath. You follow it weaving between ancient trunks. Moss brushes your legs. Branches lean, as if politely making space for you. A clearing opens ahead, circular and sunken with trees planted in deliberate concentric rings. You step down carefully, noticing how the temperature drops by a few degrees, maybe down to around 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit, just cold enough to tighten your skin. At the center of the grove lies a pool of still water, dark as ink and perfectly round. Around it, 12 trees, all stripped of bark. They're pale smooth and somehow skeletal. Their limbs reach upward, not like branches, but like arms raised in song or surrender. And above, hanging from the trees by cords of woven root, are chimes. Hundreds of them, made from bone, from wood, from polished stone. Some are shaped like tongues, others like teeth. When the wind stirs, they sing not in notes, but in whispers. You found the choir of the dead grove. This is where the monks came not to live, but to be remembered. It's said each chime represents a vow taken a secret, kept a final confession whispered into wood, and left to swing in the wind. The grove acts as a chorus, a literal harmony of the dead. And tonight, the dead are rehearsing. You sit beside the pool. The surface reflects nothing like the water itself, has no memory of light. But when the wind picks up, the chimes begin to sing together, notes layered so precisely you feel them behind your eyes. The vibrations press into your bones, not unpleasant, just ancient. This is where the whispers live now. According to a letter written in 1252 by a Cistercian monk named Gautier du Sable, there was a holy wood where the air itself chanted and bark wept during eclipses. He claimed to witness a grove that produced sound without instrument or voice. Most dismissed his letter as a hoax, or more politely, a poetic hallucination brought on by starvation. But de Sable described this exact configuration: 12 trees, a black pool, and chimes that sounded only when no one spoke aloud. You remain quiet, and now the whispers change. They become voices, not just ambient sound, but conversations overlapping in dozens of languages, some lost, others known. You hear a prayer, a love confession, a warning, a goodbye whispered so tenderly you feel your own throat tighten. Then one voice rises above the others, yours. You freeze, but it's not you speaking. Now it's something you said earlier, your greeting, your question, even your breath. The grove is echoing your memory back to you. You try not to panic, because if the grove can do that, what else does it remember? What else has it kept a chime? Drops suddenly, snapping its cord, and falls beside you. You pick it up. It's warm. Etched with runes, you don't recognize the shape of a human ear carved into its side. This wasn't just for song. These chimes were recordings, not digital, not analog. Organic, made from pieces of monks who had given their bodies literally to the grove. The choir sings on. You lie back in the moss, staring upward. And here's the wild fringe story for tonight. In 1904, a Norwegian explorer named Einar Blix claimed to have found a forest in Bulgaria where voices came from the wind. He said the trees moaned during storms and screamed during eclipses. Blix collected a chime carved from bone and brought it home. Within a year, he burned down his cabin and vanished into the snow, leaving behind a journal that simply read, "They are still singing." Historians, of course, call it an exaggeration. But now, lying here with a bone chime on your chest, you wonder, because the grove doesn't feel malevolent, it feels mournful, like a cathedral that still prays long after its congregation is gone. You close your eyes, and the choir sings softer, a lullaby of old regrets, of things confessed too late, of memories whispered into wood by men who knew the world would forget them, and who planned for that. You open your eyes and realize something new. The trees in this grove are not just memorials, they are guardians. They hold the memories too heavy for human minds, the truths too dangerous for ink and vellum, and the cost of hearing them is being remembered in return. One more chime drops. You pick it up. This one has your name carved into it. You don't remember anyone carving your name. You didn't say it aloud, not here. And yet the chime in your hand bears it etched with precision, tiny grooves tracing every letter like someone knew you'd come. You sit up slowly, still holding the bone chime. It's cold again. Not lifeless, but waiting. You hang it gently on a low branch. The moment it settles, the surrounding trees fall silent, like a conversation paused mid-sentence. Then a single chime answers deeper, slower, vibrating your ribcage. You've been accepted, or warned. You stand. The forest feels different again. No longer just ancient, it's attentive. The pendant around your neck pulses once softly, as if responding to the chime. You make your way out of the grove, moving through the trees like a thread through the eye of a needle. They lean just enough to let you pass. The trail ahead narrows until it forms a natural corridor of tightly packed trunks and hanging moss. The light dims further, and suddenly everything is quiet. Not just no birds quiet. This is absolute silence, the kind you can't make with technology, the kind where even your heartbeat sounds too loud. You're entering the sanctum of the tongueless, a space reserved for the monks who took the final vow. You see them before you feel them. Figures seated in rows among tree stumps. Some are cloaked in rotted robes, others nothing but bone cradled by roots. Their heads are bowed. Their hands rest in their laps or on their chests as though in prayer. But it's the absence of mouths that freezes your breath, literally. Each skull bears the same wound, clean, deliberate where the tongue should have been. You're not alone here. There's a presence, a pull. You walk between the rows, your footsteps muffled by moss so thick it's like walking on velvet. Some of the skulls turn ever so slightly as you pass. Not dramatically, just enough to make sure you notice. According to surviving fragments of the Liber Silentiarius, a monk's final devotion was silence not just in practice, but in body. When words became too dangerous, too corruptible, the monks removed the one thing that could betray them. Their tongues? What they gave up in voice, they gained in clarity. They spoke only through trees. Their breath became bark. Their names erased from ledgers were stored in leaves. The last monk to take this vow would become the echo-bearer, the living repository of the order's collective memory. You reach a stone altar. It's half swallowed by roots. On its surface rests a wooden tablet, carved not with words, but with grooves like a vinyl record, a tool meant to be read by touch and sound. You place your fingers on it, and your ears ring. A voice blooms in your head, not spoken, not heard, but felt. It pulses in waves, sorrow knowledge, exhaustion. It doesn't tell you anything directly. Instead, it reminds you, not of your own life, but of something older. As if it's using your memories like clay, shaping them into something larger. You see flashes. A monk kneeling beneath a stormlit tree, whispering his final truth. A root twitching as if reacting to pain. A man in royal robes sobbing into the dirt. A tree blooming blood-red flowers on a winter morning. And here's your quirky side. Fact: in 1564, A Scottish botanist named Hugh Fenwick recorded the existence of a forest grove where no birds would sing and where he saw what he called nun trees, trunks split at the top like mouths forever open in prayer. No one else ever found the grove again, and Fenwick died shortly after claiming he'd heard his mother's voice coming from inside one of the trees. You run your fingers over the tablet once more, and this time the voice says one word clearly: release. The trees sway, the roots shift, and from beneath the altar, a panel opens. Inside, a scroll perfectly preserved, wrapped in waxed linen. You unroll it carefully. The writing is tiny, looping elegant. A list. Names. Hundreds of them. Some are crossed out. Others glow faintly in the dark. Near the bottom, a space left blank. And suddenly, you understand what's being offered. The order isn't gone. It's recruiting. They've watched you listen to you. They've tested your curiosity, your respect, your fear. You're being asked to join not in body, but in memory. To carry part of the forest with you. To become a voice that whispers even after silence takes over. The last skull on the row turns toward you. A vine slithers near your feet. Not to trip you. To offer you a pen. You stare at the vine. Its tip is sharp thorns retracted, revealing a tapered end like a quill. It doesn't touch you, only hovers. An invitation. Or a dare. You glance again at the scroll, the blank space waiting like fresh snow. The idea of writing your name here among the monks who severed speech and whispered secrets into living wood should terrify you. Instead, it feels familiar. Like you've done this before. Your fingers tremble as you take the vine quill. It pulses once in your grip, warm, slightly damp the way a heartbeat might feel in plant form. You lower the tip toward the parchment, but stop short. What happens when you commit? Are you offering a piece of your memory? Your voice? Yourself? You pull back, and the grove responds. The roots beneath your feet ripple rising in narrow ridges. The trees around the circle tighten their posture, not threatening, more like breath held. You speak. Just once. No. Your voice sounds strange here. Too loud. Too human. The chimes overhead do not respond. The scroll rolls itself shut slowly, like a door politely closing. The vine retracts, slipping back into the earth. You've made your choice. But the forest isn't angry. It's amused. Forgiveness hums softly through the roots. You haven't offended the monks. You've simply remained your own. And for that, they respect you. But now you must move on. You exit the sanctum of the tongueless, and the light shifts again. The air warms slightly, maybe to around 15 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit. The trees are less dense here, and a light breeze finally brushes your face. For the first time in what feels like hours, you hear a bird call. Just one. A simple, cautious chirp. You pass under a canopy of amber-leafed trees, their trunks twisted into spirals. You notice small plaques, nailed to some of them, wooden weather-worn. Each bears a phrase carved so finely it looks like handwriting. He sang his grief into the roots. We do not speak, but we are never silent. The lie echoes longest. You stop at one that simply says, a whisper is a promise you can't take back. The wind stirs again, and suddenly it changes. A new current of air sweeps through the trees, hot, acrid, smoky. It carries with it the unmistakable scent of burnt wood. You follow the scent. The forest thins rapidly. Ferns grow scorched, then vanish altogether. Trees become skeletal blackened. The soil crunches beneath your boots, ash, not earth. You're entering a place where something sacred went horribly wrong. This is the beginning of the whisper plague. It starts with one tree. You see it from a distance, charred split still smoldering at the edges. Around its base, the ground is cracked and dry. No moss, no root growth, just decay. You approach cautiously. Then you see the plaque, unlike the others. This one is metal. Bronze still intact, It reads, "Here was whispered a lie that could not be forgotten. This is the tree the pilgrim corrupted, the epicenter of the rot." According to legend and several contradictory accounts written centuries apart, one monk broke his vow. He whispered something selfish, something false, into the core of a sacred ash. Some say it was a betrayal. Others claim it was grief that twisted into denial. Whatever it was, the tree absorbed it, and something changed. Instead of storing the whisper, it amplified it. Within weeks, nearby groves began to echo distorted versions of the lie. Trees dropped their leaves out of season. Bark split in strange patterns. Roots turned brittle. Entire colonies of mycelium, the underground fungal web connecting tree to tree, collapsed. The monks tried to stop it. They pruned, burned, isolated. But it was too late. The forest had already begun to forget how to remember. That's the paradox, isn't it? A system designed to preserve truth, poisoned by a single deliberate lie. It wasn't just a moral failure. It was a structural one. The monks had built something beautiful, but they hadn't made it immune to corruption. The result: half a valley silenced, a whisper plague that didn't just kill trees, but severed their ability to share, to warn, to be. And here's tonight's strange but true footnote in the 1700s. Records from a Franciscan outpost in northern Spain documented a sudden death of all cedar trees in a narrow ravine. No insects, no rot, just sudden collapse. The monks there had no explanation except that one of their brothers had died confessing a false vow carried by bark. Make of that what you will. You walk through the scarred grove. Here, trees no longer lean in. They lean away, as if recoiling from something they still remember, but no longer understand. You pass a stump split down the middle, its heart hollow. Inside, a few blackened chimes lay broken, melted into puddles of glassy resin. You crouch and pick one up. It's sharp at the edges, fragile as burnt sugar. It cuts your finger. A drop of blood hits the wood. The tree groans. Low, mournful, old. You step back. The wind returns, not gently, but in a sudden gust that kicks up ash and sends a faint sound through the branches. Undo. It's not a command. It's a plea. The forest wants to forget what happened here, but it can't, because someone must remember. And now that someone might be you, ash clings to your clothes. It creeps into the folds of your sleeves, into your nostrils, under your nails, like the forest marking you with its sorrow. You move through the remains of the grove carefully, as if walking through a dream, half consumed by fire. Then just ahead, you see it. A break in the trees like a wound. Beyond it, a barren hill rises, gentle but unmistakably unnatural. The kind of elevation that doesn't come from geology, but from history buried beneath dirt. You ascend. Each step feels heavier than the last. The ground is dry but soft, as if remembering the weight of every footstep that came before yours. When you reach the summit, the view is both haunting and breathtaking. Below you lies the charred heart of the whispering forest. You've reached the site of the hollow night fire. The stories are inconsistent, typical for oral history, warped by fear. But they all agree one night centuries ago, the forest burned. Not just the trees, but the air, the memory, the voices. Villagers said the wind itself howled like a dying choir. Monks fled, chanting prayers that vanished into smoke. And then, nothing. Silence. What caused the fire is still debated. Some say it was lightning. Others say it was a deliberate act, a final attempt to erase the plague of whispers to purge the rot. But the more unsettling theory, that the forest did it to itself. You find a ridge of blackened stone, and within it, a hollow stump, not burned. Glassified as though heat had passed through it in an instant, fusing wood into something beyond recognition. You crouch, peer into it. There's a glow, just faint. You reach in and draw out a sapling. Tiny, alive. Bark the color of dusk leaves that shimmer faintly in the fading light. Its roots pulse softly in your hands. Not rapidly, just a steady living beat. Like it's breathing. This is the last tree, the one that somehow survived the fire. Not unscathed, its trunk bears scars, tiny spirals, scorched black but alive nonetheless. The monks called it Salveum the Keeper. It wasn't just a survivor, it was a carrier of memory, of warning, of hope maybe. You cradle it gently and descend the hill. The pendant at your chest begins to vibrate. It pulses in time with the sapling's heartbeat. The wind dies as you reach the base of the hill. A single shaft of light breaks through the gray sky above, illuminating a circle of unburnt earth, surrounded by low stones. You place the sapling in the center. It roots itself immediately. No ceremony, just acceptance. The moment its roots touch soil, something shifts. The trees nearby, dead scorched, leaning straighten slightly. Their bark ripples like old scars twitching at a phantom memory. The wind hums not with melody, but with recognition. The forest knows the last of the old order has returned, and it's not angry, it's relieved. You kneel, and that's when you hear it. A single clear whisper spoken not from the trees, but from within you. It begins again. You look around, nothing moves, but the air is warmer. Not by much perhaps, up to 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Enough to feel like spring. And here's the final mystery for tonight's thought spiral. In 2001, a satellite survey of Eastern Europe found a cluster of trees emitting a strange thermal pattern. When scientists visited, they discovered a perfectly circular grove, 12 trees surrounding a young ash with spiral markings on its bark. No one planted them. No records existed. The site has since been closed to the public. Some believe it's a genetic fluke. Others suspect something older, deeper. You stare at the sapling now, swaying gently, its leaves catching a wind that doesn't seem to touch anything else. You hear distant chimes again, but these are new, softer, brighter, as if the forest is rehearsing a new melody. You rise, but before you leave, the sapling leans not much, just enough for one leaf to brush your arm. You feel a memory slip into you, not yours, not even human, but grateful. And now you understand. The forest doesn't just remember people, it remembers intentions. Lies twisted it. Truth nearly destroyed it. But quiet reverence, someone willing to listen, not demand, has helped it begin to heal. You walk away slowly, the trees parting around you. Their branches don't reach anymore. They bow. By the time you reach the edge of the forest, the pendant has cooled completely. The sapling is out of sight, but the whisper remains. It begins again. You step beyond the forest's edge, but it doesn't feel like leaving. More like being gently released. The way an old friend lets go of your hand, reluctant but understanding. Behind you, the trees no longer whisper. They rest. And in the hush that follows, you hear your own breath for the first time in what feels like days. It's shaky, human. A little too loud now that you've grown used to the murmurs of memory and the creak of ancient bark. But the silence is not empty. It's peaceful. You walk along a narrow ridge, now the forest to your left, an open field to your right. The sky opens wide, brushing soft clouds across a cool blue canvas. The wind here carries no voices, no sighs, just itself. Yet your pendant still pulses faintly. Not like before, no rhythm, no encoded message. Just warmth, presence. A small reminder that the forest is still listening, still remembering. And you are part of that memory now. As the trees recede into the distance, your mind replays everything. The monks in silence, the grove of chimes, the burned ring of forgotten lies, the sapling that didn't just survive, but chose to grow again. You wonder what will happen next. Will the forest ever speak again the way it used to? Will someone else one day walk the same path, find the same chimes, trace the same spiral grooves, and feel their own name whispered back to them from bark. You suspect the answer is yes, because forests, like people, do not truly forget. They simply wait. You follow a worn trail that arcs through the field like a scar. The grass bends with the breeze brushing your legs as you walk. You reach a small stone marker, half buried and moss-covered. No name, no date, just a symbol, a vine curling around a tongue, and a second spiral. You smile just slightly. It's not a monument, it's a seed. The monks are gone, yes, but not lost. They live in the roots, in the memory of the trees, in the echoes of those who listen not with ears, but with patience. The forest didn't need to be saved. It needed to be heard. You place a hand on the stone, close your eyes, and for the final time the forest whispers, not to warn, not to weep, but to thank you. For not taking, for not lying, for simply remembering. You turn and walk onward. The path is yours now, and the secret, if you keep it, will always be almost forgotten, but never truly lost. Your body relaxes now, every breath settling deeper, slower, quieter. The weight of the forest lifts, but the memory remains soft, warm like fingers, brushing sleep into your thoughts. The trees no longer loom. They recline, at peace, and the monks, their vows fulfilled, exhale one final time through leaves that rustle only for you. You're safe now. There's nothing chasing you, no secrets pressing into your spine, just the quiet hum of something very old and very kind, making room for your tired mind to rest. The wind outside your window might sound like leaves. Let it. The creaks of the house may echo like footsteps behind you. Let them. You've been part of a forest older than fear itself, a witness to whispers etched into time. You've carried a pendant, touched truth, and left without demanding more than what was freely offered. That's rare. That's worth remembering. So wherever you are now, whether curled beneath blankets, or lying back with your hands behind your head, or just letting sleep slowly soften the edges of your thoughts, know this: the monks still whisper, the trees still remember, and the forest will always leave a space for those who walk. Gently ask little and listen much. Close your eyes if they haven't already fallen shut. Let the last of the whispers become the rhythm of your breath. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. Maybe by now you've already drifted off to sleep, and if so, we hope this story brought you peace of mind and helped you rest a little easier. Deep sleep makes life better, and we're truly happy to be part of that. Until next time, sleep well, dreamer.